Skill 2 and good evening, everyone. Welcome to MSBS Weekly Guided Meditation by Phra Goh. Today is 12 January 2021. Time now is 8:31. We'll skip this since everyone here are regulars. MSBS is fortunate to have with us Bhante Adhibalo, popularly known as Phra Goh. Bhante was born on July 14, 1985 and had his Bhikkhu ordination under the Thai Dhamma Youth Sect at Santi Forest Monastery in Johor, Malaysia in 2008. Bhante is currently the Vice President of Wat Palelai Buddhist Temple, Singapore. Today's guided meditation is based on Maha Satipatthana Sutta. Bhante will be leading the homage to the Buddha and taking off the 5 precepts for Buddhists. Now let us compose our minds, put our palms together, and welcome Bhante. Over to you, Bhante.
Okay. Right, thank you, Terence, for the intro. So now we shall start with the opening chant. The homage. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. And the 3 refuges. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. And the 5 precepts. Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Kamesu miccācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musawada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Surameraya majjapamadatthana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So good evening. Brothers and sisters of the Dhamma, and today is the second lesson of this Maha Satipatthana Sutta, or the greater discourse of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So last week we touched on the introduction, right? Okay, next. Yeah, the introduction. What did the Buddha say next? And the objectives, right, is to overcome this suffering that is in line with the fundamentals of Buddhism, right? It's not to gain more things materially. So, and the overview, right, is just restricted to 4 things, 4 aspects: mindfulness of the body, feelings, mind, and the Dhamma or mental qualities. So again, there are many kinds of things you can be mindful of the weather, mindful of the COVID figures, mindful of the the stock market, whatever it is. So there are many things to be mindful about. But in this case, you want to talk about right mindfulness is just with regards to these four, right? So last week we talked about the difference between secular mindfulness and spiritual mindfulness. So when we talk about right mindfulness, is about this one. Okay, next. Okay, and we talk about in mindfulness of the body, there are 6 components, 6 aspects. So we covered on mindfulness of the breathing next. So when a person mindful of the breath, these are instructions what to do next. Yeah, so there are 4 steps: breathe in, breathe out. There's no need to control the breathing, at least for my interpretation. No need to control, let it be your natural reflex action. Just that you must know, whether it's long or short. And the whole idea is to relax the body and the mind. Okay, next. Okay, so every end of each component, the Buddha will, or rather the sutta will re-emphasize this objective. Is something like in music, there's always a chorus. When you have a verse, first verse, second verse, and if chorus, third verse, chorus, fourth verse, chorus again, right? So this is something like chorus. Some people call it stock formula. So it's very repetitive. So it kind of emphasizes the importance of mindfulness of whatever meditation you're doing. Okay, so for the case of mindfulness of the breath, so I'll read out the first paragraph. In this way, he remains focused internally and internally on the body in and of itself, or externally on the body in and of itself, or both internally and externally on the body in and of itself. Okay, so there are many mindfulness, mindfulness of the mind, mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of the Dhamma. So if let's say a person just want to be mindful of the body, that is fine. This is what this statement is saying. You don't have to be mindful of feelings, don't even need to be mindful of the mind, states of mind. If a person just mindful of this body, this aspect, right? It can be both internally, that means within yourself, or externally, that means looking at an external body. So this is what it means. Okay, and the second paragraph, or he remains focused on the phenomenon of origination with regard to the body, on the phenomenon of passing away with regard to the body, or on the phenomenon of origination and passing away with regard to the body. Okay, so this is, or rather the key emphasis, to be mindful of the arising and passing away. So if let's say your mindfulness not so sharp, you cannot observe both rising and passing away, then observe one, either arising or the passing away, whichever phenomenon, whichever occurrence that is obvious to you. So it's got to do with evidential base. Evidential base. You don't purposely create or imagine something. So this is what you're supposed to do, observe what is evidential. Or the third paragraph, or his mindfulness that there is a body is maintained to the extent of knowledge and remembrance, and he remains independent and sustained by not clinging to anything in the world. That is how a monk remains focused on the body in and of itself. So if let's say a person really cannot observe arising and passing away, let's say the factors are very weak, maybe they are very tired or very sleepy, whatever it is, they're unable to catch the arising or the passing away, then they just come back to the meditation object, to the breath or to the whatever 6 of the components mentioned later, right? Just stay with that theme, and the whole idea is as long as this greed, right, and this aversion, this craving, this clinging to the world is reduced, then you're correct. If let's say the more you stay and the greed doesn't reduce, hatred doesn't reduce, that means something is wrong. You need to troubleshoot. That means something is wrong with that remembrance. The way you remember it might be out of the wrong context, out of the wrong intention. So last week we talked about the middle way, or rather most of the sessions we talk about the middle way. There are 2 extremes. Either the mind is geared towards greed, or you breathe for selfish reasons or personal health reasons. You want to improve your health, you want to maybe gain more vitality, whatever it is. So some people maybe they do breath meditation for this reason. And aversion, hatred, when you breathe, a person does it to torture themselves. So this is another extreme. So in the Buddhist middle way is actually avoiding these both extremes. So the Buddha coined this new term, this right mindfulness, or the middle way, is avoiding this both. So he invented this, we call it right thought. Right thought, that means the counter, or rather the opposite of the extremes. Right, extreme is actually our craving. So basically thoughts of non-greed and non-hatred. So we have loving kindness and like this impermanence or this decay. So we'll talk about that later. So we can apply it on the breath. So some people think meditation on loving kindness is one object by itself. Actually, that's not necessarily true, right? Loving kindness is the framework, the kind of attitude you need in the Eightfold Path in order to succeed. Okay, and the next slide. Okay, so the next one is the 4 postures, right? So some people think that in meditation is just sitting full lotus. It must be very nice seated on the meditation cushion or your yoga mat, and it must be on not something like a very Instagrammable kind of pose, very nice to look at. Actually, not necessarily true. Yeah, so there are this thing called the 4 postures. So a person, as long as they're walking, the first one. Furthermore, when walking, the monk discerns, I am walking. So this is one of the posture. Second posture, when standing, he discerns, I am standing. Third, when sitting, he discerns, I am sitting. Fourth, when lying down, he discerns, I am lying down. Or however his body is disposed of, that is how he discerns it. Right. So meditation is basically all around the clock. So once I introduce this concept, right, do not have an excuse to say, oh, I have no time to meditate, I have no time to sit down. Actually, every posture is just a physical setup. Meditation is, we call mental cultivation. It's what's in the mind, right thoughts. Right? It's not that when you sit down, then you can have right thoughts. After you stand up, you cannot have right thoughts. That's not true, right? You can have right thoughts at any of these postures. So when they mention any other posture, it can be squatting down, whatever it is. The body can be disposed in many flexible positions. So the whole idea is whichever scenario you're in, that is an opportunity to practice mental cultivation or right mindfulness. Okay, next. Okay, so again, the chorus is repeating itself. So I don't think I have to read it through. So the first paragraph is either maintain internally or externally. So you can be mindful of your own physical posture or mindful of maybe another person's physical posture. Right? So some people might do it wrongly. Let's say they don't follow the middle way. They look at other people's posture or the breath. They start to find fault. Hey, you see you slouching. You're falling asleep, you're nodding. Okay, unless they are the teacher, right? But if not, the whole idea is we call it reduce clinging, right? So when a person is mindful of the change of posture, they have to reflect in a way that, oh, this body is not a robot. The body is not 24/7 in one posture all the time. The body is always changing. That's the whole idea of reflecting both internally and externally. The whole idea is to reduce this clinging. Okay, and number 2, again, same thing, have to observe the impermanence, right? Rising and passing away. So even if you sit down, you can't be 24/7 in this fixed position. And the number 3, right? The body is maintained to acknowledge the extent of remembrance. So if let's say you cannot observe rising and falling, then you just observe, okay, mindful, okay, there is a body. That means you come back to the present moment. So this is more towards samatha, right? Coming back to the meditation object. And again, the whole idea is, I forgot what I say, but never mind, I'll move on to the next one. Okay, so the third one is activities, slightly related to the previous one, but it extends to the things we do, right? So it's described in here. So when a person is going forward, returning, makes himself fully alert when looking toward, looking away, bending, extending his limbs, carrying his outer robe, whatever. That means all the activities, right? Eating, drinking, chewing, savoring, when urinating, defecating, walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, and whatever, right? So some people will interpret it as when you eat, you must know all the flavors, must be aware, sweet, is it sour, enjoy the taste. That is not really in line with this passion, with most of the teachings in the suttas. Yeah. Okay, next. So again, the objective, if a person, is mindful, right, of the activities they do internally, externally, the whole idea is to create this unclinging, to create this passion. So when even a person tastes the food, you have to know the change of the taste. It cannot be sweet all the time. The sweetness will be disappear when you wash with the water or you taste some other food. The taste will be gone. So the whole idea is to take note of the arising and the passing away, to create this passion, not to enjoy the taste, right? So there's a difference, all right? So again, earlier on I was talking about the 4 postures or whatever activities. The whole idea is not to some people have a misconception when you sit, you have to sit for many, many hours, you have to stay in a certain posture. That's not true. There are many case studies, the disciples of the Buddha, some of them got enlightened in the various postures, like the wisest disciple of the Buddha, he got enlightened while fanning the Buddha. He was standing beside the Buddha and fanning the Buddha. Last time there was an electric fan, so they have to use the manual fan. So the Buddha was giving a discourse. He was, this Venerable Sariputta is standing beside Buddha and fanning the Buddha to cool him down with the hot weather. So while fanning, he was listening and contemplating what the Buddha taught, and he got enlightened. Right, so this is how Venerable Sariputta, the wisest disciple of the Buddha, got enlightened. He's not seated in a full lotus position, and for those many hours to sort of to reach enlightenment. So again, mindfulness or mental cultivation can be practiced in any posture. The whole idea is to train to create this right thought. So when the condition is right, when you keep on generating this right thought, reduce craving, eventually you have an aha moment when a person suddenly awakens. So that's the whole idea, right? Okay, next. Okay, so we've covered 4 postures and activities. So now we're going to move on to impurities of the body. This is normally the first phase of our meditation. Normally we start off with imagining the body. So the scriptures mention a case study. So it gives something like analogy, right? So furthermore, just as if a sack with openings at both ends were full of various kinds of grain, wheat, rice, mung beans, kidney beans, sesame seeds, husk, rice, and a man with good eyesight pouring it out were to reflect, this is wheat, this is rice, these are mung beans, these are kidney beans, these are sesame seeds, these husk rice, and so on. In the same way, a monk reflect on this very body with the soles of the feet on up, from the crown of the head on down, surrounded by skin and full of various kinds of unclean things. In this body there are, okay, next. Okay, so this is the whole exercise. We are supposed to contemplate on all the body parts. So in the ancient science, probably like 2,500 years ago, they classify the body, they break it up into just 32 components, 32 parts. So you have the head, have the body, nails, hair, skin, flesh, tendons, bones, bone marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, pleural, spleen, lungs, large intestine, small intestines, gorge, feces, bowel, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, skin, oil, saliva, mucus, fluid in the joints, urine, and lastly, the brain. So the brain is actually not inside the sutta, I added it in. So these are called the 32 parts of the body. So now with modern science, we talk about cells and DNA, RNA, whatever it is. So now it's more complicated, more advanced, even talk about the subatomic particles and so on. Yeah. So, but in ancient days, this was recommended to the monks, and especially later on, if we look on the next, the few components. They are going to talk about the charnel ground meditation. So this is when a person is able to look at the different body parts. So unless you're of the medical background or having studied biology, then you'll get to have some visualization on these organs. If not, any ordinary person won't have any idea how does their brain look like, or how does their bowel, spleen and the pleura, how does it look like, right? So, and most of the ordinary people won't have any idea how their internal organs look like. And and nowadays, there are certain traditions or certain schools, they prefer vegetarian. So they do not even have a meat sample to refer to, right? So unless you're not vegetarian, you go to the market and you look at the internal organs of the pork or whatever it is, the chicken and whatever animal they're buying, and then you have an idea of these internal organs. If not, if you're fully vegetarian from young, you have no idea what is this, right? So this was the practice to understand the internal organs. The whole idea is to reduce lust. Again, I would like to mention with caution, this practice can be practiced wrongly if a person doesn't practice in the middle way, right? Without the proper right framework, without this loving kindness first, right? And they practice and they start to have aversion to the body, or start to feel depressed, and that will be the very sad outcome. So in the Buddha's time, there were a group of monks who did the wrong way. In the Vesale Sutta, this group of monks are contemplating on the body until they feel suicidal, and they committed suicide, or they got someone to kill them. So that was what happened 2,500 years ago, and I believe it will happen now, as long as a person doesn't have right contemplation or right guidance. Then some people think meditation very safe. No, not safe. You need guidance, good guidance. If not, something will happen. So again, it is a visualization kind of meditation. So it will develop this thing called the Iddhipadas, that we call the four bases of psychic power. So if a person visualize for a long, long time, again, have to exercise with caution. If a person not guided properly, they develop certain divine eye abilities. They start to chase unseen beings, and they get distracted, or even they get deceived by those unseen beings, or worse still, deceived by their own imagination or hallucination, right? So that would be the worst case scenario. So again, in our routine, we just do the very superficial kind of visualization, just the external parts of the body, very short while, just to create detachment. Okay, next part. Okay, so again, you have to align the objectives. This way he remains focused, right, internally, externally. So when we talk about internally, it's your own body, or there are different interpretations. Some people say internally is your imagination. So like when we think of the hair, so it's the mind door, when imagine, we didn't open our eyes, so it's our imagination. Or imagine our heart, imagine our lungs, our kidneys. So this is internal. That is one kind of interpretation. And the external, they interpret it as the physical body, something solid which you can see and feel, right? So another interpretation is internally as in your own body, and externally is maybe some other body, like a corpse or something else, where a person can reflect those things are not self. Okay, and the second paragraph, the same thing, have to observe the arising and passing away. So in our meditation routine, what we do is the birth, aging, decaying, and passing away of the organs, of the parts of the body, hair, nails, teeth, skin. So what happens is, we think of the hair growing long, how it gets dirty, how it turns white, and how it falls off. So this way, when a person does it, they create detachment. So before we do this, normally again, I will do loving kindness first. Because if a person doesn't do loving kindness first, and they straight away go into this decaying process, then it will be no different from any person who want to complain about health. Oh, my skin is getting uglier, getting rotten, whatever it is, let's go see a skin specialist. Or no, this part is my hair is turning white. Let's go and dye my hair, right? So they won't see it in a way that create detachment, right? So we need to have loving kindness first to be, we call it, to have more open, more accepting mind before we start to contemplate this decaying and impermanence of the body parts. Then we're able to accept, oh, this is nature. Then we can accept. Then it won't be a denial. Of course, I'm not saying we are denying medical treatment. You have your you have your right to go for medical treatment, but whole idea is we call this creating mental detachment. Mental detachment, right? Okay, so the last verse is talking about if you're unable to think of the rising and passing, then you just think of that body part. Then again, this is more samatha, samatha based. Okay, next. Okay, next is the four elements. So we have the Chinese characters for Huo to Sui Feng, right? The fire, earth, water, and wind, right? So furthermore, just as a skilled butcher or his apprentice, having killed a cow, would sit at a crossroads cutting it up into pieces, the monk contemplates this very body, however it stands, however it is disposed in terms of properties. So in this body, there's the earth property. So the earth property is all the solid and hard kind of objects in the body. And liquid is all the fluid, saliva, the blood, sweat, tears, urine, whatever. And the fire property is the heat, temperature, and the wind property is the air, the air in the lungs, air in the stomach, and when breathing out, so the movement. So again, there's this thing called the subtle elements. It's not just the physical kind of elements, there are also the subtle elements. So it can be any sensation that is hard and soft, that is called the earth property. Any sensation that has some form of moisture, that is the liquid property. Any sensation that you feel or you perceive to have heat or cold, that is the fire property. Or any sensation that you feel that has movement, fast or slow movements, that is called wind element, wind property, right? So it's a perception when you breathe in and out, when you feel the breath or when you feel the body. Sometimes I will ask you to observe the sensations, whatever sensation arises, we treat it well, happy, or we treat it as impermanent. Okay, next. Okay, then again, have to align with the objectives. Okay, so the four elements again is not something magical or superstitious. It is based on the pre-Buddhist kind of idea that the four elements make up the universe. Four elements make up the universe. So again, so the Buddhist, the Buddha used this concept to apply in the meditation as well. So again, first is internally or externally. So a person can be mindful of the four elements, internally or externally. Or like let's say if you look at a screen in front of you, so this screen is also made of a solid object. So that is an external way of contemplating, and right. So there's also heat, generating from your device, and so on and so forth. Then again, contemplation of arising and passing away. So the changes can occur internally and externally. So the whole idea is not to create clinging. So any moment or every moment, if a person were to pay attention to an object for more than 2 seconds, definitely they'll be clinging. So the whole idea is to, if possible, to observe impermanence or to remind yourself of impermanence. If not, the person will definitely cling and believe it's there's a delusion to believe it's permanent, it's real, right? And the last one, if a person is unable to observe impermanence, then they should just be mindful of the four elements at least, the concept. Okay, so again, I would like to use this Zen kind of analogy, the Zen master when he wrote this poem, 3 statements, 3 statements. So the first statement is say, see mountains as mountains, kan shan shi san, yeah. So the normal way of seeing things, we see things at the screen, see the body, we perceive it as the normal way of perceiving things. That's our default programming before we learn meditation, before we learn Buddhism, right? You see mountains and mountain very grand, body very nice or very ugly, whatever. So this is normal way of perceiving things, right? So if a person were to see, next statement he wrote, see mountains as not mountains. So a person is to perceive everything as your meditation, kind of contemplation, or see the mountains as 4 elements, or see the mountains as impermanent or 5 aggregates, whatever it is. So the whole idea is to reduce clinging. And the final statement, eventually if a person is realized, then he can just see mountains as mountains again. So this is the Zen poem kind of analogy I would like to share before we conclude the statement. So before we reach enlightenment, right, the whole idea is we have to be mindful of impermanence all the time. All right, so that concludes the short sharing. I don't want to talk too long because some people, you talk too long, they fall asleep. So we keep it short and we stay true to the guided meditation. All right, any questions on the ground or on the comments? So you can type or you can whatever, yeah? Anybody want to ask anything?
There's none so far, Bhante.
Yes.
There's none so far.
Okay, all right. Means very clear. Yes, Sinwi, yeah.
Oh, so Bhante, by the way, thank you so much for picking this sutta as the studying focus. This is actually the align with the objective. This is the area where I got into trouble. I was like, what is actually internally, externally? And I was having a hard time to comprehend. But I thought that you actually explained it quite well. And I think I just not to think too much about it and just go with whatever that you suggest. And I think that's definitely more than sufficient.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
Perhaps
for
this further, deeper understanding will come much later when I practice more. Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, so every time we revisit the same scripture, we might have new insights. Because perception is always impermanent. So even in the Buddha's time, he mentioned there are 4 grades of people. That means 4 different kinds of spirituality, in terms of grading. So the very high quality kind of practitioner, he talked about the contemplation of this body. So if a person were to just hear news of people getting sick and dying, like this pandemic, then they reflect, oh yeah, it's impermanent, then they're able to realize the Dhamma. So this is the highest grade, you see. Don't have to see the physical body, just hear the news only, then they contemplate somebody, some stranger, some far place. Some people get ill, some people, sickness, or they pass away. Then they realize the Dhamma. So this is the first grade. And the second grade is they hear news, but it is their friends and relatives. Then they start to worry for them. Then there's some attachment. When there's attachment, then you feel affected. Or your friends or relatives somewhere far away got illness. Then you start to contemplate on the Dhamma. Life is impermanent. Then this is the second grade of persons. And the third grade of person is they have to see it physically for themselves. There's a body passing by, a dead body passing by, and they look at it. Right, then this is the third grade. And the fourth grade is if a sickness happened to themselves. To that they themselves get the sickness, and then they start to contemplate, health is not permanent, health is impermanent. Then they start to reflect. So these are the 4 grades of people. So Dhamma is not always within the body, as can be both internally and externally. Very similar to our historical Buddha. When he was a prince, he saw the four sides, and that kind of jolted him to the spiritual quest. Okay, any other questions? Wow, no questions, all good. Okay, so if there's really no questions on the ground, then we can have a short break. So it's like 9:06 on my clock. So
sorry, I think MK Young raised his hand.
Oh, he raised his hand. Okay, yeah. So yes,
You can
please do ask a question. Can unmute.
You can unmute, or you want to type. MK Young, are you there?
Maybe pressed by accident.
Oh, okay. All right, then 5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes, and we'll see you back for the guided meditation. Yes, MK Young, you have something, a question earlier? You need to unmute yourself. We cannot hear you.
Yes, Pandey, good evening,
yes.
and hello everyone. Actually, just now Pandey mentioned about when you see mountain and see mountain as if it's not a mountain. What do you mean by that? How to imagine?
Okay, you need to use the meditation objects to contemplate. Like earlier on, I give an example of the four elements. See, we talk about seeing the body as the four elements. So we can see anything external as a four element. See the mountains as the four elements, or even looking at this screen right now is four elements. So the heat that produced from a device, there's a fire element. Anything solid in that device, there's the earth element. Any moisture is a water element, and any kind of movement, there's the wind element, the convection current, whatever it is. So all these are happening all the time. So if a person was to perceive things in terms of the elements, or things in terms of different smaller components, multiple components, naturally the expectation or desire towards the object will kind of reduce.
Okay, thank you, Bante.
Okay, all right, no problem. Okay. Right, so I think we shall start. Okay, so no, it's 9:14, so we find a comfortable sitting position. Okay, and give his back. Make sure the back is upright and the muscles are relaxed, not tensed up. And we're going to go through the first routine and first phase of the meditation, which is the visualization of the body parts. So it's just external body parts. So we're going to visualize the hairs. So when practice the middle way, we're going to wish all the hairs of the head well and happy. And the face down all the way to the rest of your feet. All the hairs of the body be well and happy. And then the next thing we're going to do is contemplate on the aging process of the hairs. So the hairs go through birth, aging, decay, and passing away. So they grow long, they get dirty, oily, sweaty, they turn white. Sometimes they crack due to dryness, or they have splits. And eventually the hairs will fall off. Every day there are lots of hair falling off. And we can even ask ourselves, are these hairs truly self? Well, in the Thai forest tradition, they use this Asupa meditation as vipassana. And the next part of the body, we can visualize the nails or the fingernails, may they be well and happy, and all the toenails, may they be well and happy. And all these nails are subject to birth, aging, decay, and death. So they grow long, they collect dirt, get dirty, sometimes they discolor, and they go through wear and tear, scratches, cracks, or they even chip off. And we can ask ourselves, are these nails truly self? Can you tell the nails not to go through this birth and death? And the next part of the body, we're going to visualize the teeth. All the teeth in the mouth, may they be well and happy. All the upper rows of teeth, may they be well and happy. And all the lower rows of teeth, may they be well and happy. And all these teeth are subject to birth and death. Right, so they change in shape and size. They change in color. Over time, they get dirty, or the plaque build up. Then they turn yellow, turn brown, and they decay and turn black. And they have these tooth cavities, they grow holes, and they get shaky, they get loose, and eventually they fall off. And we can ask ourselves, are these teeth truly self? And we tell the teeth not to go through this birth and death. And the next part of the body is the skin. We're going to wish all the skin well and happy from head to toe, the organ that surround the whole body. May all the skin be well and happy. All the skin are subject to birth, aging, decay, and death. So they get dirty, oily, and sweaty, and they wrinkle when it's older. Sometimes they have skin problems like allergies, rashes, sore, redness, pus, pimples, cracks, so on and so forth. And the skin, they fall off every day. All the dead skin keep falling off. And we can ask ourselves, are the skin truly self? Can we tell the skin not to go through this birth and death? And we are now going to the next part of the meditation, second phase, which is the breath. So we're going to feel the breath below the nostril, above the upper lip. So now we're going to quarantine the attention. So there's no need to visualize. So we let our breathing be natural. When there's inhalation, you know. When exhalation, you know, fast or slow, long or short. So to add on some value addedness, we're going to have loving kindness to the breath. So whenever there's an inhalation, you wish the breath well. If it's a long breath, then you well. Then if a short breath as well. Right? So it's 2 in 1. And if you breathe out, wish the breath happy. A long breath out, happy. So the whole idea is to make friends with the breath. Never attempt to control, fight, or struggle with the breath. Some or a lot of meditators have this habit to try to force the breath or mind to be still. So the more they want to fixate and still the mind, and the more suffering they have, more craving, more clinging, more stress. So we emphasize on the root problem, the cause, which is to deal with the craving. So we focus on this loving kindness. Once the craving is reduced, naturally, the mind will calm down by itself as a byproduct. Inhale well, exhale happy. So once we are relatively at peace with the breath, right, then we can introduce the impermanence, thought of impermanence. Then we can observe also the arising and passing away of the breath, impermanence of the breath. So definitely there will be impermanence if the breath is, if you cannot find impermanence, that means you're not breathing. So everyone has different levels of sensitivity. So we start off with the physical breath, right? And breathe in, breathe out, we should well and happy, or impermanence. Now, arising of the inhale, inhalation, there's one arising. And before you exhale, that is the cessation, the ceasing of the inhalation. And when you breathe out, there's a rising of the exhalation. And when you stop towards the end of the exhalation, then there's the passing away of the exhalation. So you take note of, we call it rising and falling. So one more thing to emphasize in my meditation now is this thing called wakefulness. So every time we remind ourselves of this right thought, this impermanence, then there will be wakefulness. A lot of meditators have a habit of must relax, no, don't need to do anything so much, yeah. Right, but in my routine, there's actually a lot of things to do, lots of thinking. We call it right thinking, right thoughts. So definitely have to generate right thoughts. You cannot let your mind take control of the steering wheel naturally by itself. Right, no autopilot. Once you leave the mind autopilot, definitely if you go into stray thoughts, daydreaming, restlessness and worry, falling asleep, even to enjoy the peace and calmness of the mind, you need to generate this right thought, yeah? Deliberately, think this is impermanent. This is arising, this is falling. We have to generate this thought every moment, right? Every time inhale, and there's arising, falling, exhale, arising, falling. So keep doing it until the mind is more and more detached. And the next concept we are going to introduce are the 4 elements. So in the inhale and exhale, there are 4 elements, or the 4 sensations that are present in the inhale and exhalation. So in the inhale, any hard and soft sensation, that is the earth element. So when you breathe in and out, any change in the density of the sensation, that is the birth and death, or the arising and passing away of the earth element. Same with the fire element, that is the heat or the temperature. We breathe in and out, any change of the temperature, warm and cold, then that will be the arising and passing away of the heat element. And the wind element is the movement, the speed. So if there's a change in your breathing rate, fast and slow, then that is the birth and death of the wind element. And the water is the moisture, moist or dry. So when you breathe in and out, any change in humidity, that is the birth and death of the water element. So this thing has to be evidence-based. Yeah? You don't have to imagine or deliberately create these 4 elements, right? The 4 kinds of sensations. It has to be, right this here and now, whatever that's appearing right before your very nose, and that will be the element. So there's no need to cling on to one sensation. The whole idea is to be a passive observer within that small confined area. So if it transforms, then it's a real transformation, real natural impermanence. Yeah. And now we are going to direct the mind sort of externally. So now we already observe internally, so now we're going to sort of radiate externally. So we're going to wish all beings in front well and happy. So all beings in front also go through change, and they go through this aging, sickness, and eventually they will pass away. And you also can feel the elements in front and extend this attention to the front, right? How come you only can feel the front and not the side or the back, right? Unless I tell you to, right? So when you just feel the area in front, that particular area, there's like certain kind of density, certain form of movement. These are actually very subtle elements, perception of the mind. So whatever you experience, whatever sensation, whatever change taking place, be mindful of its impermanence. Come back to ourselves, internally, and then we wish all beings behind well and happy. And all these beings behind go through this birth, aging, sickness, and death. And we wish them free from suffering. And this attention, this perception and consciousness, all these sensations you feel are all also changing all the time. Is the area the same? Is the length and width of the attention the same? Is the area the same, right? So you need to observe. Is it changing or is it fixated? And we come back to ourselves, and we are going to wish all beings on the left well and happy. All beings on the left go through this birth, aging, sickness, and passing away. And we wish them free from suffering. And this awareness to the left, all the sensations we feel, also go through this arising and passing away. And then we come back to ourselves. And next we wish all beings on the right well and happy. All beings on the right go through this birth, aging, sickness, and passing away. And we wish them free from suffering. And the attention that we perceive on the right also goes through various kinds of changes. Like when we extend the attention to the right, is it moving slowly? Is it moving quickly? All these are subject to rising and passing away. And we come back to ourselves. And we wish all beings above well and happy. And all beings above are subject to this birth, aging, decay, and passing away. And we wish them, may they be free from suffering. And all these beings above also go through, this attention that we feel above, also subject to arising and passing away. And we come back to ourselves. And next we wish all beings below well and happy. All beings below are subject to birth, aging, sickness, and passing away. And we wish them, may they be free from suffering. And we come back to ourselves, noting the change in the attention. And this time round, we feel this entire body again from head to toe with loving kindness. Make this entire body be well and happy. And as we feel the entire body, we also can be mindful of this called this breath body, and the body breathing by itself. Basically, that's the circulatory system and the heart pumping. Every expansion and contraction of your blood vessels throughout the body. That is the rising and passing away of every heartbeat. And once we fill this whole body with loving kindness and awareness of impermanence, then we can extend out to all directions, above, below, and all across, starting with our house. May all beings in this house be well and happy. And then we can extend this loving kindness to the surrounding neighborhood. May all beings in the neighborhood be well and happy. As the mind extends, and also be mindful of its change, its rising and passing away of the perception. And then we can think of the entire country, whichever country you're in. May all beings in your country be well and happy. And eventually we extend this loving kindness to the whole world. May all beings on earth be well and happy. So as we extend to the entire world, so be mindful of the changes of this attention, these elements, and this perception. And eventually we extend this loving kindness and wish all beings in the entire universe be well and happy. When the mind is set and boundless, as the mind extends, also be mindful of the impermanence, rising and falling of the sensations. So we maintain this boundless loving kindness as long as possible. But to maintain, need to be mindful of impermanence. Yeah? If we cling on to any nice sensation, either peaceful or whatever pleasant sensation for more than 2 seconds, then that is actually clinging. So that's why we must be aware of impermanence all the time. So you can be aware of that sensation, but at the same time, be mindful of impermanence. Okay, so before we conclude, just another gentle reminder from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. If a person were to maintain this boundless loving kindness, be it standing, sitting, walking, or lying down, which is the 4 postures of right mindfulness, then it is said this is called the highest conduct of the noble living. So with that in mind, then we may physically conclude the meditation by opening our eyes, but mentally, right, we can sort of maintain this right mindfulness, right thoughts. So it's a kind of training to condition ourselves to bring it out of sitting. Right? It's not just about sitting that is meditation. Okay, so we have like 4 minutes or so before 10. Any problems or questions that you all want to bring up?
Bante, can you define what is breath body?
Okay. Yeah, there are different, again, different interpretations. It can be the one small area, this might be called the breath body, or some people might think the calming the entire breath body would be the whole physical body. So these are the few different kind of interpretations. Right, but again, to me, it doesn't matter as long as the person is able to to stay with that and able to continue to be mindful and create detachment.
It does not refer to the whole process of the in breath all the way in and then all the way out. It does not actually refer to that, right?
Yeah, depends on how you define all the way in. So if you want to talk about the whole, the entire body, that would be when you talk about breathing in, the oxygen needs to go to the lungs and eventually go to the heart. So that would be, and eventually go to the entire bloodstream. So that would be all the way in. So you have to feel the whole body beating.
So while we were doing the meditation just now, you also mentioned the breath body. So that one refers to which part of
Okay,
the...
yeah. So when I mentioned about the whole expansion and contraction of the whole body, that would be the whole body one.
Including
The initial part when we feel one small area below the nostril, so that would be the just the smaller area. So we start off small, then we go bigger, and it's easier. We start off with a large area, hard to catch. Yeah, so we start off with something small, and we go bigger.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so the whole idea is these are called different mental cognitive functions, right? Be it a small area, there can be possibly greed, hatred, delusion. With a bigger area, there's also possibility of greed, hatred, delusion. So the whole idea is small area, we can learn to practice detachment. Bigger area, we also must learn to practice this creating detachment. So it's training different function, and hopefully you're familiar so that you can bring it out in your daily activities. Okay. Right, any other questions? Okay, if not, then we can conclude. Any chants at the end? Okay, so you added. Okay, so again, this is just a formality, it's a ritual. The actual practice would be the loving kindness, which we've already done. So now it's just recitation, but with more effect because we really generate the loving kindness. Dedication of merits. Anumodana. Akasata Chepumata Devanaga Mahitika Punyang Tang Anumoditva Chirang Rakadu Loka Sasanam Etavata Amhihi Sampada Punya Sampadam Sabe Deva Sabe Bhuta Sabe Sata Anumodantu Sabha Sampati Siddhya. Patedana, transference of merits to departed. Idam vinyatinam hotu, sukita hotu nyatayo. Idam vinyatinam hotu, sukita hotu nyatayo. Idam vinyatinam hotu, sukita hotu nyatayo. Patana aspiration. Imina punya kamena ame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yavani bana patiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, so good night. Any announcements from parents?
No announcement today.
No announcement. Okay, then
See you next week.
Yeah, next week.
Thank you,
Okay,
Bante.
good night.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Bante.
No problem.